Now, of the 4 topical issues selected, the first has been selected in the name of Deputy Eugene Murphy, who wishes to discuss Pobal funding for Mountbellew Community Childcare Centre in County Galway, and we welcome the Minister for Children. Minister is a poem to deal with this particular matter. Deputy Murphy.
Thank you, Cancor, and I really appreciate that this particular issue was allowed for discussion today. And Minister, I do appreciate that you've come in here to answer my queries in relation to this issue, and I know that the community in Mountbellew will also appreciate the fact that you have, stayed around to listen to the case I'm going to make, and maybe, hopefully, have some good news for me. Minister, I want to raise the urgent situation in relation to Mountbellew Community Childcare Centre in the County of Galway. The centre has applied for a public grant to fund a much-needed extension. The centre can currently cater for about 50 children. Presently, there is a huge waiting list to access the centre. Due to this waiting list, some 30 extra children are currently using an interim measure of the loan of the National School GEM. Now, Minister, I'm sure you acknowledge that that is not an ideal situation, and as you can imagine, it's not easy to manage it. The children are spending hours in their National School gym where they have no access to rest areas. Even with this, there are many children in the community who cannot access the centre as they are at maximum capacity. There are many families whose children are not able to access their local community preschool programme. As we know, attending a preschool in your locality with your peers who you will begin national school with is an advantage all our children should be afforded. Now, children in the area are forced to attend preschool in satellite towns, and even at this, they are only able to access limited days. Parents in this situation have been told that their children are not advancing as well as hoped due to the limited attendance. The centre urgently needs to be afforded this Pobal grant. I feel this warrants immediate review. To invest in this centre makes economic sense. We must be able to facilitate parents to work and contribute while our children, the future generation, are nurtured in the best environment possible. This is rural Ireland. This is the generation working full-time, bolstering our economy. I have been contacted by so many parents and members of the public from the Mountbellew area in relation to this pressing matter. One particular email from a concerned father really rang a bell with me. He said that in January of this year, himself and his wife queued outside Mountbellew Community Childcare Centre from 5:30 a.m. 5:30 a.m. to try to get their daughter a place for September, only to be told no room at the inn, no space. This is because the childcare centre has no space and needs this extension urgently. I must say Mountbellew is extremely fortunate to have a childcare centre of this calibre. All the emails to me from parents have noted the professional nature of the staff and the loving, caring and nurturing environment. I think it speaks volumes that the majority of staff working there have been there for many years and continue to deliver the highest standard of care with a continuing innovative approach. Thank you for listening, Minister.
Deputy Minister, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you, Deputy Murphy, for raising the issue. A key priority for me as Minister for Children and Youth Affairs is to ensure that all children can access early learning and care and school-age childcare that is both affordable, accessible and of high quality. My department supports the growing sector through the provision of capital funding where it is most needed. After decades of low levels of investment in early learning and care and school-age childcare in Ireland, I think that we are finally making real progress. Indeed, over the past 4 budgets, investment has increased by 117%, rising from €260 million in 2015 to €575 million in 2019. Assisting childcare providers in extending their existing childcare services and establishing new childcare services has been one of the key areas of focus for my department's capital programs. And each year, my department reviews the capital programs as a whole and determines the priorities for early learning and care and school-age capital grants. The capital strands have been made available to achieve strategic priorities for 2019 as determined by the department, and having regard to the funding available, the current state of the sector, learning from previous capital programs, and feedback and input from key stakeholders, including childcare providers and Pobal. So in 2019, then, I have secured a capital budget of €9.6 million for the sector, which will enable a focus on increasing the number of places available and supporting the transition of services to the forthcoming National Childcare Scheme. I have allocated €6.1 million of this funding for the 2019 Early Learning and Care and School-Age Childcare Capital Programs, and that funding is going to be delivered in 3 strands as follows. €4.23 million will be delivered under Strand A, which will offer grants of up to €50,000 to early learning and care providers for the creation of new places of 0 to 3-year-olds where demand for these is clearly evidenced. I've also allocated €875,000 to Strand B, which will offer individual grants of up to €15,000 to aid community not-for-profit early learning and care services in addressing fire safety issues. And finally, there is to be a €1 million strand for Strand C, which offers individual grants up to €20,000 to school-age childcare providers for the creation of new school-age places where demand for these is clearly demonstrated. I remain committed to assisting all childcare providers, both community and private, in providing world-class childcare and meeting demand for childcare places. The Deputy is probably aware that the application window for the capital programs closed on the 27th of March 2019, and the appraisal process for the applications is currently underway in Pobal. And as I'm sure the Deputy can appreciate, that in the interest of fairness and equity, I am unable to comment on any services capital application. However, I would like to assure you that all applications for funding will be appraised in a fair, thorough, and impartial manner, and in accordance with principles of fairness and equality, no favour will be shown to any individual service or services, and all appraisals will be undertaken on the basis of the content of their applications for funding alone. The decisions are due to be delivered to applicants in June of 2019, with the aim that capital works can begin as soon as possible following this. The results of the appraisal process, including the final decisions, will be communicated to providers directly following their completion.
Mr. Deputy Murphy.
Minister, and again, thank you, Cancora, for allowing this to be debated today. And Minister, I do want to acknowledge your reply, and I fully understand that you can't tell me about any project here today. I acknowledge that fully. I again want to compliment you on fighting a good battle in securing such money at the Cabinet table for such projects. And I know you realise that the up-and-coming generations are the people we have to nurture, we have to care for. I think I've made a strong case here for Mountbellew. I am sure that it will come within the remit of that funding. And basically what I've been doing here today is to make you fully aware of the importance of that facility in the town of Mountbellew. Wonderful community, very progressive, lively town, I have to say, one of the liveliest towns in the west of Ireland, but very much community focused. And very much part of that community is the childcare centre, and the fact that people know that their children are being nurtured, cared for by good people in a good centre. And indeed, I welcome the funding that has become available to a number of projects in the Roscommon-Galway constituency. So I said I'm not going to labour the point. I thank you sincerely for being here. I thank you for listening. I fully understand that you can't give commitments on the floor of this House, but now you really know the importance and the significance of the childcare centre in Mountbellew and the pressure that we're under, and I appreciate your time to deal with this matter today.
Thank you, Deputy Murphy.
just want to say that I think it's really very, very helpful for me to hear your commentary, particularly in relation to the Mountbellew Community Childcare Centre, and the way in which you describe particularly the quality of the provision for the children, and the incredible commitment of the providers and the staff, the professionals, and it's so important for us. And for me as Minister, that they continue to do that work, to stay there. I know it can be challenging at times, and I know that that we are working to enable with investment to ensure that their own, really their terms and conditions can increase with the investment, as well as the investment in relation to capital to creating additional spaces. As the Deputy can appreciate, I suppose the calculation, imagination, assessment of the number of places that we require, putting money against that in terms of investment, is not an accurate science, but as I've tried to describe in my response, is that we are trying to learn from all the stakeholders that are involved and included, and particularly local communities, as we, and very special type of science called the Geosparsity Index, etc., is utilized by Pobal in order to get a sense of where the gaps may be in terms of capacity. But certainly when you raise the issue for this centre on the floor in such a clear, articulate and passionate way, it helps us to be aware not only of that centre but also potential capacity issues in the wider area that you're speaking of. So I'm really grateful for your the fact that you did this today. Thank you, Deputy.
Thank you, Minister and Deputy. Now we move to the second item in the name